Hello and welcome to Getting Started with Affinity Photo 2, a course of free tutorials, hints and tips on this excellent photo editing software. Hello and welcome to my latest tutorial on using selection tools in Affinity Photo. In previous tutorials, we've looked at the use of adjustments and live filters to make global changes to an image that we're editing. They're global because when we change something, we're changing the whole image. For example, in this photo, we have a pleasant enough scene of Corfe Castle in South England, but the sky is quite bland and uninteresting. So let's look and see what happens when we adjust the brightness and contrast. We go to Adjustments. We click on Brightness and Contrast. The sky is a little bit too bright, so let's reduce that. And let's increase the contrast. Let's switch that on and off so we can see before and after. Before and after. So we've definitely improved contrast and color saturation in the sky. But you'll see the foreground has now gone quite dark, and it's definitely an effect that we do not want. So this is the limitation of making a global editing change to the photo. We want to find a way that only makes changes to certain areas, in this case, the sky. Let's go back on our history to our starting image. Affinity Photo has a wide range of selection tools that allow us to select certain areas and objects within a photo. By being able to do this, we can do selective editing to these areas, or we could even remove an area or object, or we could even replace an area such as the sky and introduce a new sky to this photo. There are many tools. Some of them are relatively advanced and fiddly to use. If we look under Select in the menu selection toolbar, we will see many options. We can even select color range, selecting reds, greens, blues, tonal range, midtones, shadows, highlights. We can make selections that affect all layers, or even just top layer, bottom layer. We can select which layer that we want a selection to be taken from, or we can do the whole image. We can even select on color. So if we use our color picker and we select this light blue area of the sky, click on that, we can see the selection is now only picking out these areas of blue. There is a tolerance adjustment slider at the bottom. You can see that has done quite a good job of selecting the sky. It has also selected some other similar toned areas within the landscape, but that's not a big problem. That can be rectified. Let's cancel that for the moment. However, if you have the update for Affinity Photo 2, which was a free release recently, you will see in this tool panel that we have an object selection tool. If we click on that, it will now spend a short time analyzing the photo. And now that it's done that, it will select certain objects and areas within the image. We'll see. So if we want to select the trees, for example, we quite simply click on that. But we can also add to that selection in this toolbar here. That's the existing new selection, but we can add a new area. By doing that, we now have two areas selected. And we can add as many areas as we like. If we find we have added an area that we don't want, we go back up here, we have subtract, and we can take that area away. Subtract, subtract. We can even use a square selection tool, and it subtracts everything in that area. Let's go back to add, and we're going to add the sky. So we've selected most of the sky, but as you can see, it is not selected in between the leaves and branches. To take this one step further, we can refine our selection. Click the Refine button. It's now created a mask of the areas that haven't been selected, but we want to select the areas of sky between the leaves and branches. You can see we have a round brush tool. We can make that larger by clicking on our square bracket. Now, if we paint over this area, it has now done a very good job of selecting the sky in between the leaves and branches. And we can add to that. So we've got actually a very good selection technique, which has separated our sky from the trees and from the landscape. We hit apply. Our marching ants show the areas that we've selected. We come away from the object selection tool. We can see it's just the sky that's been selected. Now, if we make our brightness and contrast adjustment, reduce the brightness, increase the contrast, and if we take away our selection by going to deselect, let's look at before and after. This is our brightness contrast layer. Switch it off. The sky is quite flat and bright. Switch it back on again. The sky has been darkened, has more contrast. But the foreground and the castle have not been changed. So rather than making a global edit to the photo, we have made a selective edit. Right, let's look at another selection technique for this sky. If we go back in our history to where we started, in the tool panel, we also have a selection brush and we have flood select tool. These can both be very useful. If we look at selection brush, see our brush has appeared. We want to select the sky, so let's just click and swipe over, and it is selected the sky. However, as before, it has not been very good in selecting little bits of sky between the leaves and branches. But once again, we can go to the Refine tool. We can paint over the areas we want to improve on. And we've now got a much better selection. Let's come out of that. And let's look at our flood select tool. Go back to the beginning. So we're now going to the flood select tool. It doesn't come up with a large brush, but if we click, it is selecting that particular color and tonal range across the image. Now, if we go back up here, as before, we have the option to add and subtract. If we click add, and we'll click on a different area of sky, and we can carry on doing this until it's selected all the tonal ranges that we wish. You can see it's also selected some areas within the landscape that we do not wish to be selected. So let's go to subtract. These are quite easy to remove. If we use our selection brush tool, make sure it is on subtract, and simply draw across the selected areas that we want to deselect. Now we have selection that just applies to our sky and is also selected in between the branches and leaves. Once again, we will do our adjustment. Reduce the brightness, increase the contrast, and if we now deselect, we'll switch it off and on, before and after. So we've made selective changes to the sky, but not to the whole image. If we look at our layers panel, we can see we have a new layer for the brightness and contrast adjustment, but we've got this box with a blanked out area. As we've made our selection and our edit, we have created a mask. And masks are a very effective way of making multiple selective edits to your image. And we will look at that in more detail in the next tutorial. Now, what if we don't like the sky? What do we want to remove the sky altogether? So if we go back on our history to our sky selection, if we make sure we've selected the whole background, we have a sky selection. If we go to edit and cut, it removes the sky. It is now transparent and blank. If we want to introduce new sky, we already have this image of a dramatic sky open. If we do edit and copy, we'll go back to Cork Castle, edit and paste. Our sky is a new layer on top of the castle layer. Let's pull this down so we actually take it behind and below the castle layer. Let's deselect. You can see now we have a totally new sky introduced, which has added much more drama to this. This is our old sky. This is our new sky. So I hope you can see from this video that selection tools are a very easy and quick way of making localized editing changes to your image, and they are a powerful tool for removing and replacing objects. In our next tutorial, we will look further at masking and how that can be used to our advantage when we are editing. Thank you and goodbye.